Long before humiliation found me under bright lights, my life ran on restraint. I believed in control. Over time, money, emotions. I woke before dawn, drove the same route to my office in silence, and kept my world small on purpose. No drama, no chaos, just numbers, forecasts, and quiet progress. That calm is what attracted Lydia Monroe to me in the beginning. She was the opposite. Where I conserved words, she spent them freely. Where I avoided crowds, she fed on them. Lydia loved rooms that watched her. She loved knowing she was being seen, measured, admired. When we met, she called me steady, said I made her feel safe. I didn't realize she meant useful. Marriage didn't change her, it revealed her. Over time, our home stopped feeling like a partnership and started feeling like a waiting room. She came in late, dropped her keys on the counter, and talked endlessly about her work at Brightline Strategies, the clients, the branding wins, the CEO who just got it. That CEO was Spencer Whitlock. Spencer's name slid into our conversations slowly at first. A joke here, a compliment there. Then entire stories revolve around him. His confidence, his leadership, the way people listened when he spoke. Lydia would mimic his phrases, his tone, even his laugh. I noticed things she didn't think I would. New dresses appearing without tags. Phone calls taken in the hallway. Her sudden interest in staying late for brainstorming. I didn't accuse. Accusations are loud. I gathered silence instead. The truth surfaced in fragments. A calendar invite she forgot to hide. A hotel charge routed through a corporate expense account. A reflection in a dark phone screen showing a man's hand where mine used to be. It hurt, but not the way people expect. What hurt was realizing how little she thought of me. She didn't fear being caught. She assumed I was too ordinary to notice, too small to matter. What Lydia never understood was that while she climbed ladders built on attention, I built foundations no one could see. Hale Strategic Holdings wasn't a name I shared at dinner parties. It wasn't impressive in conversation, but it controlled assets quietly, debt portfolios, acquisition vehicles, long-term leverage plays, including, unintentionally at first, a financial position tied to Brightline Strategies. I didn't plan revenge that night. I planned patience. When Lydia invited me to a high-profile industry celebration weeks later, she framed it like a favor. Just show up, Rowan. Smile. Don't make it awkward. I agreed. What she didn't know was that her world was already standing on borrowed ground, and I was the one holding the paperwork. The weeks leading up to the event felt like a slow burn, quiet on the surface, volatile underneath. Lydia became sharper with me, like impatience had replaced whatever tolerance she once pretended to have. Small comments slipped out more freely now. Jokes that weren't really jokes. Sighs when I spoke too long. Eye rolls when I asked simple questions. It was as if she no longer cared whether I noticed the disrespect, because in her mind, I had already been reduced. At home, she treated me like furniture, useful, silent, expected to stay in place. Her routines changed completely. Morning workouts replaced shared breakfasts. Late nights replaced conversations. And when she did come home early, she stayed glued to her phone, smiling at messages she never explained. I didn't ask anymore. Asking gives power. Observing takes it back. Spencer Whitlock's presence grew louder without him ever stepping into our house. Lydia talked about him as if he were inevitable. You know, Spencer thinks branding is about dominance, she said once, pacing our kitchen while checking her reflection in the microwave door. People follow confidence, not humility. She glanced at me when she said it. I smiled politely and returned to my laptop. What she didn't realize was that my work had changed too. My days were filled with calls that didn't include her, meetings with attorneys, analysts reviewing exposure risks, a quiet restructuring that would mean nothing to anyone until it meant everything. Brightline Strategies was expanding recklessly. New hires, bigger offices, flash events, and underneath it all, debt stacked neatly like a house of cards. Spencer believed momentum could outrun reality. He was wrong. The night of the event arrived faster than Lydia expected. She spent hours getting ready, occupying the mirror like it owed her attention. I watched from the doorway as she adjusted her dress for the third time, angling her body like she was already on display. "You're coming, right?" she asked without looking at me. I said I would. I replied calmly. She exhaled, the sound sharp. Just don't hover. This is important for me. Important for her. Not for us. The rooftop venue buzzed with artificial warmth. Laughter polished to sound effortless. Conversations floating just loud enough to be heard. People dressed like success was contagious. Lydia came alive the moment we stepped inside. Her posture changed. Her smile sharpened. She slipped her arm from mine within seconds. I became invisible. She floated between groups, introducing herself without me, laughing too loudly at jokes I didn't hear. When Spencer arrived, the energy shifted instantly. He commanded attention without effort, pulling Lydia into his orbit with a familiarity that would have shocked me once. Now, it only confirmed what I already knew. They stood close. Too close. I watched from a distance, nursing a drink I didn't finish, listening as fragments of conversation reached me. Lydia's voice rose above the rest, confident, theatrical, proud. Spencer leaned in, whispering something that made her laugh harder than necessary. At one point, she glanced over at me. Her eyes didn't soften. They calculated. That's when she made her move. Lydia tapped a glass for attention and reached for the microphone near the small stage. The crowd responded immediately. She had practiced being admired her whole life. I wasn't planning to say anything, she began, smiling like she owned the air. But tonight feels special. People leaned in. She talked about ambition, about success, about surrounding yourself with people who lift you up. Each sentence floated closer to the edge, and I felt the room tightening around me. Then she gestured vaguely in my direction. And sometimes, she continued, laughing lightly, you make choices early on that are more about kindness than compatibility. A ripple of laughter followed. She didn't say my name. She didn't have to. She spoke about supporting someone while you grow, about carrying dead weight out of loyalty, about outgrowing people who stay small. The laughter grew louder. I stood there, heart steady, pulse calm, as my marriage was dismantled for entertainment. She finished with a smile, handing the microphone back like she'd just told a harmless story. Applause followed. Warm, unthinking. For a moment, I did nothing. Then I walked forward. I didn't rush. I didn't look angry. I didn't even look hurt. That's what unsettled people the most. When I reached the stage, the host hesitated, unsure whether to stop me. I gently took the microphone from his hand. The room quieted. Not instantly, but slowly, like realization sinking in. I looked at Lydia. She smiled back, confident, certain she had already won. Thank you, I said calmly, my voice steady through the speakers. I wasn't expecting to speak tonight, but it seems honesty is appreciated here. A few people chuckled nervously. I've heard a lot about ambition, I continued. About growth. About leaving people behind. I paused. What I find interesting, I said softly, is how confident people become when they believe consequences don't apply to them. The room stilled. Lydia's smile tightened. I turned slightly, addressing the crowd now. Brightline Strategies has done impressive work. Rapid expansion, bold vision, risky financing. Spencer straightened. I met Lydia's eyes again. What's less talked about is who controls the foundation beneath that growth. A murmur spread. I won't take more of your time, I said, lowering the microphone slightly. I just want to say this. Never mistake quiet for powerless. I handed the microphone back and stepped away. Behind me, conversations erupted in confused whispers. Lydia followed me off the stage, her voice sharp and low. What was that supposed to mean? I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in years. It means, I said evenly, you shouldn't have laughed so easily. Her phone buzzed. Then Spencer's did. And across the room, the mood began to shift. The night was far from over. At first, Lydia didn't panic. She never panicked early. Panic, to her, was something reserved for other people. People without options, without influence, without a room full of allies. She followed me through the crowd with a stiff smile, still glued to her face, as if appearances alone could keep reality from catching up. What did you do? She whispered, fingers tightening around her phone. Nothing, I said calmly. Yet, that word landed heavier than anything else I could have said. Behind us, the atmosphere had shifted. Conversations fractured into clusters. People checked their screens. Smiles faded. The easy confidence that had filled the rooftop minutes earlier drained out like air from a puncture balloon. Spencer Whitlock was no longer laughing. I saw him standing near the bar, shoulders tense, staring at his phone as if it had personally betrayed him. One of his board members leaned in close, whispering urgently. Another stepped away to take a call, face pale under the city lights. Lydia noticed too. Her eyes darted between Spencer and me, confusion bleeding into irritation. "Rowan, stop playing games," she snapped. "You embarrass me up there." I finally turned to face her fully. "For years," I said quietly, "you embarrassed me privately. Tonight, I just stopped protecting you." Her mouth opened, then closed. She wasn't used to resistance, especially not from me. She scoffed, trying to recover ground. "You think a few vague comments scare anyone? You don't have that kind of power." I didn't argue. Instead, I reached into my jacket and pulled out my phone. One tap, then another. Across the rooftop, a large screen, meant to cycle through sponsor logos, went dark for a moment. Then it flickered back on. New content appeared. Not flashy, not dramatic, just clean, official text. A notice. The kind lawyers use when they want to be understood clearly. A hush rolled across the crowd. Spencer looked up first. His face drained of color as he read. He took a step forward, then stopped, like his body had forgotten how to move. Lydia followed his gaze. Her breath caught. "What is that?" she asked, her voice suddenly thin. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "That," I said, "is a notice of accelerated debt enforcement." Her eyes widened. "That doesn't make sense. Brightline's finances are solid." "They look solid," I corrected, "when you don't read the fine print." The screen listed dates, figures, lenders, and at the bottom, a name she'd never bothered to ask about. Hale Strategic Holdings. Her knees nearly buckled. Spencer pushed through the crowd toward us, abandoning all pretense. "You can't do this," he said sharply. No microphone, no audience charm. "This isn't how these things work." I met his stare evenly. "It's exactly how they work." He lowered his voice. "This company employs hundreds of people. So did the ones you leveraged without disclosure." I replied calmly. "So did the ones you used to inflate your image." Spencer clenched his jaw. "This is personal." I nodded. "It became personal when you confused someone else's marriage for an opportunity." The crowd was no longer pretending not to listen. Phones were out now. People recording, whispering, backing away as if proximity alone could implicate them. Lydia grabbed my arm, nails digging in. "You planned this," she hissed. "You waited. I gave you years," I said softly. "You used them to make me smaller." Her voice cracked. "You're ruining my life." I looked at her, really looked, and felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. "No," I said. "I'm stepping out of it." Security approached the stage, uncertain, overwhelmed. Event organizers huddled together, faces tight with panic. The sponsors' logos never returned to the screen. One by one, people started leaving. Not dramatically, quietly, strategically. No one wanted to be associated with what was unfolding. Spencer's phone rang again. He answered this time, stepping away, his voice urgent and sharp. Lydia watched him go, realization dawning that he wasn't staying to protect her. She had mistaken proximity to power for possession of it. The screen changed again. Another notice. This one shorter. Pending board removal. Effective immediately. Spencer stopped walking. He stared at the screen like it was a sentence handed down in public. Lydia's hand slipped from my arm. "This can't be happening," she whispered. I leaned in, my voice low enough that only she could hear. "You mocked me because you thought I had nothing. Because you thought kindness was weakness." Tears welled in her eyes, but I felt no triumph. Only clarity. "You don't lose people because they're quiet," I continued. "You lose them because you forget they're watching." She looked around, desperate now. Her friends were gone. Her co-workers avoided her gaze. The laughter from earlier felt like it belonged to another lifetime. "What do you want?" she asked. I straightened. "I want my name back," I said. "I want my life back. And I want you to understand something before you walk away from this place." She swallowed hard. "This wasn't revenge," I said. "This was accountability." I turned and walked toward the elevator without waiting for a response. Behind me, the rooftop buzzed with damage control and disbelief. Ahead of me, the doors slid open, quiet and indifferent. For the first time in years, I felt light. And the night still wasn't finished. The elevator doors closed behind me with a soft metallic sigh, sealing off the noise from the rooftop. For a moment, I stood alone, watching my reflection in the brushed steel walls. I didn't look victorious. I didn't look angry either. I looked finished. When the doors opened again, the city greeted me like it always had. Indifferent, busy, moving forward without ceremony. Cars passed. Lights changed. Somewhere above, the celebration had dissolved into chaos. But down here, life went on. That realization grounded me. By the time I reached my car, my phone was already vibrating with missed calls and messages. Attorneys. Analysts. One message from a board liaison confirming what I already knew. The enforcement process had begun. No theatrics. No reversals. Just consequences unfolding exactly as structured. I didn't reply right away. I drove. Not home. Not yet. I headed toward the lake, where the city thinned out and the noise softened into wind and water. I parked, stepped out, and let the cold night air hit my face. For years, I'd mistaken endurance for loyalty. Tonight had corrected that illusion. An hour later, my phone buzzed again. Lydia. I answered. Please, she said immediately, her voice stripped of confidence, raw in a way I'd never heard before. We need to talk. We already did, I replied. I didn't know, she insisted. About any of it. About what you were capable of. I closed my eyes briefly. That was the problem. Silence stretched between us. They're suspending me, she said finally. The board. They think I knew more than I did. They're reacting, I said, the same way they rewarded you before, quickly, and without asking enough questions. Her breath hitched. Spencer isn't answering my calls. I said nothing. Rowan, she whispered. I never meant to hurt you like that. I leaned against the car, watching the city lights ripple across the water. Intent doesn't erase impact. She started crying then, not theatrically, not for attention, just quiet, broken sounds. For a moment, the past tried to pull at me. The years, the shared routines, the version of her I once believed in. But I didn't step back into that space. I'm filing tomorrow, I said calmly. She inhaled sharply. Is there any chance? No, I replied gently. The word didn't feel cruel. It felt honest. We ended the call without shouting, without blame. Just an ending spoken plainly. The weeks that followed were quieter than I expected. The story broke, of course. Not as gossip, but as a case study. An ambitious firm undone by hidden leverage and internal blindness. Names were mentioned. Facts reported. Speculation followed. I stayed out of it. Let the truth stand on its own. Brightline Strategies didn't collapse overnight. Companies rarely do. But it shrank. Contracts vanished. Leadership changed. Spencer resigned quietly, his confidence no longer protected by applause. Lydia moved out of our home before the paperwork was finalized. We didn't fight over assets. I made sure she had what she needed to start over. Not because she deserved mercy, but because I refused to become bitter. Bitterness would have meant she still had power over me. Instead, I rebuilt. Not dramatically. Not loudly. I changed routines. Started running again in the mornings. This time without checking my phone afterward. I accepted fewer meetings. Spent more time investing in things that mattered. People who didn't confuse visibility with value. One afternoon, months later, I ran into someone from the rooftop event. A woman I barely knew. She hesitated before speaking. I just wanted to say, she began, that night changed how I see things. You didn't yell. You didn't humiliate anyone. You just stood firm. I nodded, unsure how to respond. She smiled. That takes more strength than people realize. As she walked away, I understood something fully for the first time. Revenge isn't about destruction. It's about reclaiming dignity. Lydia once believed she'd married beneath herself. She believed kindness was something you offered when you had nothing else to give. She was wrong. Kindness is a choice. And silence, when paired with clarity, can be louder than any microphone. I didn't take the stage to prove her wrong. I walked away to prove myself right. And that, finally, was enough.